As one of the world's major economic and political powerhouses, Germany has a lot of influence which it can exert over global situations. Now, to talk with me a little bit more about what Germany's doing on the global stage right now, I'm joined by Jan van Aken, the foreign policy spokesperson for the Left Party here in Germany. Jan, thanks very much for speaking to me. Syria is, of course, the major flashpoint in the world right now. What's Germany's view on the situation at the moment?
I would love to know. I know what my position is in Syria, and I think the only side I can take there is those people who are still peacefully demonstrating for their rights, for their democratic and human rights. But the German government, officially they don't take sides. I mean, sure, they are anti-Assad, human rights violator, repression within the country, sure enough. But officially, they're not taking any other sides with the rebels or whatever, but informally, and we see it from their involvement, with the spy ship on the ground there, the stuff, and they invite Syrian politicians for the time thereafter and train them here. So unofficially, they seem to take sides, but it's unclear to me who they are.
Now, you mentioned the training of politicians for Syria without Assad. How were those people chosen?
I have no idea. And I mean, this is it's not the government think tank, but it's the think tank that's closest to the government we have here in Germany. So somebody selected people, and I don't know on the basis of which criteria. I've no clue. I mean, we now have been invited for a final discussion. I'm outraged. I mean, how can you train some people and others not? I mean, we as the Left Party, Die Linke here in Germany, we have contacts to left politicians and people in Syria. I would know who I would pick, but obviously these are different people.
So if these people have been brought here to Germany because, well, Germany sees them as being beneficial for the country in the future?
Sure, obviously. I mean, there's sort of an idea this government has, which is not out in the public space. I don't know about it, but obviously they have an idea who they want to govern the country. Whether this is ethnically based or religiously based or politically based, I have no clue. I can imagine, I would think that they would look for people who are not too close to the Muslim brothers, so not too Islamic, far away from Assad as possible, maybe not too critical about Turkey, but I don't know.
So is Germany setting itself up as the best place to train politicians for the post-Assad era?
That's what they are doing. I mean, obviously they are inviting people here and they call it training for the situation thereafter. So yes, they're training people for government positions, and sure, they want to have them a good relationship with the German government.
Now, you mentioned the Muslim Brotherhood there, another country where they have huge influences, of course, in Egypt. How do you view the situation in that country after their revolution and their transition into a new Egypt?
Yeah, it was a very difficult situation for a long time. I was afraid that the army would take over. And now, as of today, it looks better, so that they are losing some of the power, the military, to the elected president. If this situation continues, I look hopefully to a future for the situation within Egypt. What this means for the whole region. I mean, we had the clash at the border to Israel, so I really have no idea. I think it's very volatile right now for Israel, for Egypt, Libya, Syria, and especially then all the threats from Israel against Iran. So it's too early to say that the revolution in Egypt is over, everything is peaceful and happy, but it looks better today than 4 weeks ago.
Well, to move to Libya now, what's the situation there, in your opinion? How does a country like Libya go on and rebuild itself?
One of the aftermaths very few people talk about is that many of those who fought in Libya now went to the Sahel area and are now fighting in Mali, for example, where we have now sort of a civil war, Some really extreme Muslim took over the northern part of Mali. Many of those fought before that and were equipped with weapons, everything, were trained in Libya. So we see sort of the fallout of this war in Libya in the neighboring countries.
Is there a chance that the type of situation we see right now in Libya could be repeated in Syria?
As of today, the situation for me in Syria looks much worse than in Libya. Because, I mean, the whole environment, with the Middle East conflict, Israel nearby, Lebanon, is one problem. The other problem is that right now there seems to be so many other countries who have their own interests within Syria, supporting one side or the other. It's Turkey with a Kurdish problem. So they are supporting anti-Assad movement just to prevent the Kurds within Syria to have their own, autonomy. Then you have the Gulf states supporting the rebels. You have the CIA on the ground, you have German spy ships on the ground. I mean, it seems to be the whole world have their interest now with one group or the other in Syria. And that looks to me like a recipe for a long civil war within Syria.
Now, we talk about contagion when we're talking about the Eurozone crisis. Is there a risk of a war contagion in the wider Middle East area if the situation in Syria continues?
Contagion is the very risk why the West right now is hesitant to intervene, because they know if you go into a country like Syria, you have no control over what's going to happen in the neighboring countries with Israel in the center of attention in Lebanon. So that's why right now the West does not want to intervene, because they want to avoid the spillover.
But is this not the perfect opportunity to work with Iran?
If I would just look at Syria, I would think, yes, Iran. That's now the time to get in contact with Iran. But I mean, if you look at the current news, Israel is now threatening more and more in armed conflict with Iran. They're threatening to attack the nuclear sites within Iran, and with this threat growing by the day, and I'm still not confident that Israel is really keeping at bay until November, it's very difficult for me to think about getting in more contact with Iran when at the same time there's this threat of military attack on Iran, and Tehran right now is seemed to back off the talks that started so hopefully in Moscow, for example, earlier this year. So the problem is that we are not having Syria as a problem alone. We are not having Israel-Iran as a problem alone. We have Turkey, the Kurdish conflict that is escalating, everything at the same time.
So where do you see the future of this argument between Israel and Iran?
If Tel Aviv would be rational, I would be happy and think nothing's going to happen, because I think a military attack on Iran could be nearly suicidal for Israel. Considering that with all the change in Egypt, in the neighboring countries, an attack like this, you don't know how the region will react. And if Netanyahu would be rational, I would be happy and safe and think, no, they won't dare to attack Tehran. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that Netanyahu is that rational. I mean, he's really increasing his attacks, his verbal attacks on Tehran. And I'm afraid his calculation might be, before the US elections, I can attack Iran and Obama has to back me. After the election, he might not want to back me. So that gives us a really, really bad chance that Netanyahu might attack in October.
As soon as October?
It starts with an attack. Then the question is how an attack from Israel on 2 or 3 nuclear sites in Iran, how will that develop? I'm not sure it will develop in an all-out war, but I mean, attacks on Israel will happen. Then you don't know how Tehran will react with the Strait of Hormuz, whether they will close it or not. That will definitely start an all-out war.
In terms of Germany's role, what job is there for Germany to do?
Germany could really change a lot in that region. It was Tehran who asked Germany some 9 years ago to mediate in the conflict on the nuclear program. It was Germany who moved the 3+3 talks in the beginning in 2003. And when I'm talking now to ambassadors in the region, or when I went to Tehran a couple of months ago, I mean, everybody thinks that Germany should play a better and a stronger role. Unfortunately, this government just plays the US cards. So whatever the US does, they follow it, and they don't have any initiative on their own.
What kind of initiative would you like to see?
The first thing they could easily do is de-escalate the conflict with Iran. I mean, they could really go 3, 4, 5 steps towards Tehran and say, okay, now we believe that you stopped the military nuclear program in 2003. So that we are lifting the sanctions and we are engaging now in a human rights talk and in economic talks and this and that.
But if Germany just lifts their sanctions, is that not purely a symbolic act?
No, it would be much more than symbolic, because the UN sanctions are rather small and then the EU sanctions are much, much bigger. I mean, it's the oil embargo. That's very big. And Germany was sort of the powerhouse behind the oil embargo. They could easily have said in May, okay, we postpone it for another 6 months. Postponement. Not lifting. that would have been a very strong signal to Tehran, and in Tehran they could have started negotiated. Yeah. But Germany didn't move on that. I mean, I really fought here with my own government and said, what's the problem with a moratorium for 3 months, for 6 months, and they wouldn't move on it because they just follow the US line here. They don't have their own policy agenda. That's really bad, I think. The other thing is weapons. I mean, German arms exports are third biggest in the world after Russia and the US. And they should stop selling weapons in the region. And that involves Saudi Arabia as well as Israel as well as other countries. And they are still selling every kind of weapon to that region.
What would you like to see from a German government's foreign policy?
Right now? I mean, if they would do nothing at all, I would be happier than what they are doing today. I mean, officially they're not doing much, but then we suddenly can read in newspapers that they send a spy ship, you know, that they are monitoring everything, that they are helping the rebels against the Assad regime, they are taking sides in a military conflict. That's exactly wrong. I mean, better would be, if you don't do the right thing, do nothing.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to speak to you.
You're welcome.